Hello and welcome back to our look at every single episode of The X-Files. Today we have a fun and light episode and the conclusion to the quee-logy with Quagmire episode 22 of season 3. Debuting May 3rd, 1996, Quagmire takes our agents to a small lakeside community where mysterious deaths are occurring and the only suspect is a Nessie-like lake monster. The episode begins and I'm not sure what this show's obsession with frogs and toads is, but I've seen more amphibians so far than I have aliens. It's nice to see this guy has changed his ways since his days of eating people. Dr. Faraday and Dr. Bailey are having a little argument over frogs and environmental issues. It seems the frog population has dropped severely in the area in recent times, and if this trend continues, well, it can spell doom for their species. According to Faraday anyways.
You can't turn your back on nature! Or nature will turn her back on you!
Yeah, because if you do, a 300-foot lizard will show up and wreck your shit. Before Dr. Bailey heads out, he loses his beeper, and if you don't know what that is, ask your grandparents. He heads back to the water to search for said beeper, but as soon as he finds it, something makes a meal of him, and I think this frog may be a suspect. Oh, I'm terrible at riddles.
Nature's calling. I think we should pull over soon.
Did you really have to bring that thing?
That thing? Excuse me, but that's the quee, and he demands your respect. Poor Scully got wrangled into God knows what by Mulder, and since it was last minute, she had no one to take Queequeg, so she had to bring him with her. But it must be really important. I mean, people go missing all the time. What makes this case so special?
Oh, tell me you're not serious.
Ah yes, the main suspect of all these disappearances is a tourist trap. The agents meet with Dr. Faraday because he was the last person to see Dr. Bailey alive. And why is Scully dressed like Beetlejuice? While Scully keeps to the more plausible theory that maybe Dr. Faraday had something to do with Bailey's disappearance, especially since they didn't exactly see eye to eye, Mulder on the other hand thinks it was Big Blue, the local lake monster legend.
See, whenever an issue requires any real thought, any serious mental effort, people turn to UFOs and sea serpents and Sasquatch.
The doc basically mocks Mulder's theories, but he's not about to give up just yet.
And Lake Champlain, Lager Flat, Iceland.
Sounds like you know a little something about the subject.
I did as a kid, but then I grew up and became a scientist.
So according to Scully, growing up and becoming a scientist means you can't wonder about the existence of unknown creatures anymore. Sorry, Mothman, I'm no longer allowed to believe in you. I have a PhD now. The agents speak to Ted Bertram, the owner of a little live bait and fishing store, along with the greatest hat I've ever seen. Man, I need to get one of these. Ted tells the agents of his experiences with Big Blue, but I'm thinking this story has more to do with selling merchandise than it does long-lost dinosaurs. They meet a local photographer, Ansel, and to him, this whole thing is already solved. He knows it's Big Blue going around and eating everyone, but you'd think a guy who goes around taking pictures of everything would at least have a photograph of the monster by now. A local fisherman is enjoying a not-so-nice day of fishing when he gets something really big. I love fishing, but this has always been one of my fears. I was always waiting for the day I'd drag up some decomposing body.
Call the sheriff. We got a floater.
Just flush again, you don't need the sheriff. Mulder and Scully check out the half-devoured body, and it appears to belong to a Boy Scout leader who went missing recently. Scully thinks some little fishies were eating the body, but that's way too clean a cut for it to be from some feeding fish. Night falls, and oh my god, it's Big Blue! Or Ted from the bait shop. I guess stories isn't enough to bring in the tourists anymore. Gotta make some fake monster tracks as well. This is what happens when you try to make a mockery of Big Blue's name. Mulder and Ansel are at the scene of the disappearance, and they're both convinced it's from Big Blue. Scully arrives with the sheriff and Queequeg, and Mulder tells the sheriff they need to shut the lake down until they find what's killing all these people. The sheriff refuses to because closing a lake this size with only 4 deputies is an impossible task.
Sheriff, come take a look at this.
What you got?
But thank God Detective Queequeg is on the case because he just solved the mystery of the lake monster. Also, I'm not sure what caused this, but there's a weird ghost effect going on in this one shot. Anyways, we catch up with the stoners from War of the Copperphages, still wasting away high on toads this time, which I guess is an improvement over feces.
Dude, what's wrong with you? You made me drop my toad.
Chill out, man. I'll get you another one.
I would just like to point out that I'm pretty sure that's a frog, not a toad, and if you're looking for a toad, the best place is on land. You generally don't find toads just swimming out in the middle of the lake. These two need to be on their own. Seems anytime they're with a third, they end up dead. Scully thinks this was nothing more than a boating accident. She says it's like rush hour out there, when there's like 3 boats calmly just sitting there. Also, does anyone know if this is David's dog Blue, because it looks like him? While the sheriff and the agents deal with this death, Ansel, who is at a completely different location, is trying to finally get some proof that Blue actually exists. I don't know if that meat will work on Big Blue, but it sure as hell would work on me. I want to know just how damn hungry is this lake monster. With a 3rd death in a single day, Mulder wants the lake shut down. You know this episode is basically a combination of Scooby-Doo and Jaws. The sheriff still refuses to shut the lake down. I mean, this is the 3rd anniversary of the time Bob Johnson caught that 10-pound bass, so they're expecting tens of people to show up and can't give up that sweet, sweet tourist money. The sheriff himself gets dragged in the water by something he says is really big, and now all of a sudden they need to shut the lake down. Oh, I guess the lake didn't need to be shut down when they were dragging in legs with no torso, but because the sheriff touched some seaweed, oh, now we need to shut everything down. Later that night at Camp Crystal Lake, seriously, even though Jason Lives was shot in Georgia, I guess they used a stock image of this camp and added the office and vacancy signs. You can even see the same signs to the side that say friendliness, sportsmanship, etc. Nice try, X-Files, but you're not getting anything past me. The agents look over Ansel's photos, but they're like every photo of anything paranormal that has ever been taken. Scully has no time for this nonsense because she has a quee-quag that really needs to pee. I'm just gonna say it though, Scully may be the worst dog owner that I've ever seen. Like she barely even tries to hold onto the quee's leash.
Quick! Where are you going?
The quee dashes off into the woods because he senses trouble, and he may be the only one that can stop it.
Quick!
Now don't worry about the quee-quag because his story doesn't end here. After Quee-Quag heroically saves Scully from Big Blue, he decides to start his own detective agency. There he solves various mysteries, like the time he solved the mystery of the colony that disappeared off LV-426. Or how about the time he solved the mystery of the elite squad of commandos that went missing in the rainforest of Guatemala. There's no case too big or small for the Quee, and any time the agents seem to be in peril, well, you can always count on the Quee to make the save. So now that you know nothing horrible happened to the Quee, we can continue. But even though we know the Quee is fine, Scully is still pretty upset, but it was kind of her own fault. Mulder goes on and on about stuff I'm sure she could care less about, and yet he somehow convinces her to go out on the water in the dead of night. Is there anything Scully can't do?
What was that?
It ain't no bass.
It looks like they may have found their Big Blue. Either that or it's a xenomorph. This large object smashes into their boat and causes the whole thing to sink. Luckily for the agents, there just so happens to be a large rock nearby, so they have something to rest on at least. But no time to relax just yet, because that monster looks to be coming back for another round. I never knew a duck could sink a boat. Well, okay, it wasn't Big Blue, but Mulder and Scully are still on this rock together, so I guess it's time to talk? They talk about Moby Dick and how Mulder's boyhood dream was to have a peg leg. But again, they're interrupted by something coming towards them, although this time it's much larger.
Thought I heard voices. What are you two doing out here?
Dr. Faraday?
Oh, thank God, it's just Dr. Faraday. But how the hell did he make it out here? The water here is actually less than knee deep, and he just happened to be walking by, so they never really were in much trouble. But how were they supposed to know? Their boat literally just sank. So on one side of the rock, the water is deep enough to sink a boat, and the other side, you can walk in it. They get to the land, and the doctor tells them he's releasing some frogs into the wild that he bred, as their population has been on the decline in this area. And immediately, Mulder thinks the decline in the frogs is all because of Big Blue eating them. Not pollution or other predatory animals, nope, it's Big Blue, a dinosaur eating tiny frogs. And because it's running out of frogs, it's now turned to humans.
There's been another death. And this time it does appear to be some kind of animal attack. Bit of fisherman's arm clean off.
The sheriff comes in to tell the agents there's been another attack and his men are canvassing the area. Mulder tries convincing the sheriff the creature is here, but the sheriff won't listen and is keeping his men where the latest attack took place. That is until Scully uses her feminine wiles to convince the sheriff to lend them 2 or 3 of his men.
What was that?
The sheriff is barely out of earshot when a scream can be heard coming from what Mulder assumes to be Dr. Faraday. And Mulder's assumption would be correct. The lake monster attacked Faraday, leaving a nice gash in his leg. I bet Faraday feels stupid for not believing Mulder now, eh? Whatever attacked him took off in the reeds, so while Scully tends to his wounds, Mulder goes after this monster. Mulder stomps about the marsh until something very large charges towards him, but like any victim in a horror film, he has to trip first. An alligator, well, that's kind of a letdown. Poor Mulder is so bummed. His monster was nothing more than your average everyday gator. But because the universe hates him, there was a Big Blue. But like Scully, it plays hard to get. Quagmire is one of my favorite episodes. There honestly isn't much to it, but it's lighthearted for the most part and just fun. Mulder and Scully's little talk on the rock is a good character moment, which is unusual for a Monster of the Week type episode. Growing up, I was always a fan of lake and sea monsters, and this one delivers for the most part. The reveal of it being an alligator was always kind of a letdown because I really wanted to see some prehistoric monster, but it's understandable why they didn't go that route. I would like to ask though, just how hungry and how powerful was this gator? I mean, it went from area to area attacking and devouring people left and right. I don't know how much an alligator eats, but I would assume a single grown human would keep the gator well fed for a decent amount of time. Also, how was it able to pull the sheriff that far into the water? Gators are strong, sure, but I don't think they're that strong. Also, rest in peace, Queequeg. I wish the Quee had been around for longer, but apparently one of the reasons this episode even came together was to get rid of him. Yes, the producers of The X-Files added Queequeg in simply to kill him off. They were tired of hearing fans complain or comment on how Scully can just leave Queequeg all the time for her job, so they figured the easiest way to deal with this was to simply get rid of him. You'd think this might upset Jillian, but she was all for it. During a Reddit AMA, both David and Jillian were asked if they felt Queequeg deserved better than what he got. David said yes, but Jillian? No. That dog killed people with its farts, and it deserved to die a nasty death in the mouth of that alligator or whatever it was. Ugh, I had to shampoo it or walk away every few seconds because these puffs of nastiness kept happening. So apparently she wasn't fond of dog farts and was happy to see him go away. Poor little guy came into our lives eating his previous owner and goes out being eaten by a gator. The episode was written by Kim Newton and would be her second and last time working on the show, her previous episode being the Scully-focused Revelations. And even though she was the main writer, Darren Morgan had his mitts all over this episode. For one, the show contains various pop culture references, which is something Darren is known for doing, and the other was the inclusion of the characters Stoner, played by Tyler Labine, and Chick, played by Nicole Parker, from his episode War of the Copperphages. These two would make another return some 20 years later for another Darren Morgan written episode, Mulder and Scully Meet the Weremonster. And since I'll never have a chance to mention this again, but Tyler Labine also starred in the teen comedy series Breaker High with Canada's very own Ryan Reynolds. Darren even apparently wrote the entire talk between Mulder and Scully on the rock, which for most critics and fans is the highlight of the episode, even garnering its own acronym TCOTR, which by my best guess means that conversation on the rock. Originally, Big Blue wasn't actually going to even be seen. They tried having a boat drive by Mulder at the end, towing a fake lake monster, but no matter what they did, it just didn't look right. Eventually it came down to just making the creature with CGI, but I really wish we could have gotten the boat with the fake monster. That would have been a fun gag. No real big guest stars in this one, mostly just small Canadian character actors. The biggest one would probably be American actor Chris Ellis, who's appeared in movies like Armageddon and Apollo 13. Quagmire currently has an 8.1 on IMDb, and an 8 is about where I have it. This is one I go to if I'm looking for something to throw on, but the part with Quag is always a downer. Next up, we have a really good one when Mulder and Scully investigate a bunch of bizarre murders and a device that causes people to see hallucinations in the episode Wet Wired. So what do you think of Quagmire? Let me know down in the comments. Anyways, that's all for today, folks. I hope you had a great weekend and stay spooky.
It's been hiding at the bottom of a lake for centuries. Friday.
Close the lake! Close it down!
It's coming to the surface.
That was him, Scully.
It's definitely not safe to go back in the water.
It looks like it's coming straight at us.
A brand new X-Files, Friday at 9, 8 Central.